Good afternoon, and welcome to Canadian Club of Ottawa's event presented by Amazon Web Services on modernizing immigration in Canada. I'm Heather Bakken, president of the Canadian Club of Ottawa. While we're meeting on a virtual platform today, I would first like to acknowledge the rights of the Indigenous peoples for the land that each one of us is on as we view this. For the Canadian Club of Ottawa, it's the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin. Anishinaabe are the original inhabitants of the territory where the Parliament buildings overlook the Ottawa River, which just happens to be downstream, not by a lot, from one of the most sacred places for Indigenous peoples. Negotiations are underway for a modern-day treaty in what is known as the Algonquins of Ontario settlement area, which covers 36,000 square kilometers in eastern Ontario. Miigwech. Before we begin, some housekeeping notes. If you run into bandwidth issues, click here to switch stream is a button on your on the screen that will lower the video quality but keep the audio stable. For any other technical issues, click on the request help button at the bottom right corner of the webcast, and a response will be emailed to the address you used to register for the event. There is a Q&A following the minister's keynote and the panel discussion, so opportunity to engage twice today. You may submit a question at any time during the webcast by clicking on the questions tab. And I'd just like to note again, we are grateful for today's presenting sponsor, AWS, for making this event possible. And that leads me to introducing your keynote, the person who will be introducing your keynote speaker, Nicole Foster. Nicole is the Director of Global Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning and Canada Public Policy at AWS. In that role, she focuses on a variety of issues relating to digital modernization, skilled immigration, and workforce development. She's also been a champion for raising awareness on the issue of women's underrepresentation in Canadian legislatures through her previous work as a national chair for Equal Voice. Over to you, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. And I'm really pleased to be with you here today. For over 15 years, those of you who aren't familiar with AWS, AWS has been the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud platform. We built and launched our data center region in Montreal in 2017, and both Amazon and AWS have two growing tech hubs in Vancouver and Toronto. And our tech hubs are the host to world-class technology talent from around the world. Teams recruited from Canada and elsewhere are working on important development projects that impact AWS and Amazon's innovative businesses worldwide. I checked our jobs website this morning, and we have over 1,700 open roles in Canada. Over 1,300 of those are engineering or technology roles. And then others are in human resources, marketing, sales, finance, and so on. So it is really rewarding to see that my colleagues from Victoria to Halifax and cities in between can build exciting and challenging careers in technology from right here. AWS is really pleased to sponsor today's event because we are keenly aware of the importance that attraction of skilled immigration will have to our business's ability to thrive and for Canada's economic recovery and beyond. Our tech hubs, as I mentioned, are home to world-class talent from around the world, which is a hugely inspiring environment to work in. As you can all imagine, the pandemic public health measures, both here and around the world, have significantly and understandably slowed the progress of skilled and talented workers, as well as their families, to make their way to Canada. Digital modernization of our immigration processes has never been more pressing. And so while I represent a business interest in this important policy arena, I have a personal one too. My husband immigrated to Canada 5 years ago so that we could be together. He left behind a rewarding job with colleagues that were like family, an aging mother, and a vastly extensive Irish family, and most importantly, his son and daughter. When we decided together that Canada would be our home base, we planned on hosting lots of friends and family here, as well as lots of trips back to maintain those ties. We, of course, did not imagine stay-at-home orders and closed borders, and not being able to hug the people we love during our toughest times. I think my husband has been extremely brave to start a new life in Canada, and everyone else who leaves what they know to establish a new home here are brave too. And I am really grateful that they're brave because we need them here. As I said, the pandemic has made the need for digital transformation of immigration even more pressing, and the government has made important investments towards that pressing need. I have the privilege of speaking to a lot of different organizations about their digital transformation processes. And when it comes down to it, these transformations are at their core significant endeavors of change. And this type of change rarely succeeds without strong leadership to encourage, coach, and drive that effort. And for that reason, we are really fortunate to have a minister who is both an enthusiastic learner and leader to execute on that mission to improve the immigration experience. Our Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, Marco Mendicino, was an accomplished lawyer before he entered political life. He was a federal prosecutor and went on to co-lead his own law firm. He's a committed public servant and my neighbor in the riding of Eglinton Lawrence. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you today the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, Marco Mendicino. Welcome, Minister. Thank you.
Good afternoon, bon après-midi. And as we begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining you from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. And I also want to take a moment to thank Nicole for that very warm introduction and for setting the scene for today's discussion. And knowing, Nicole, your husband, Paul, and your family, I really do think that it provides an important personal note on which we are going to talk about the substantive things that we have done in immigration over the course of the past year. But I really do want to, again, acknowledge both your leadership with AWS, as well as I say, really striking a bit more of a personal and intimate note as we dive in. J'espère que vous vous portez tout bien avec l'arrivée de printemps et des vaccins. Je souhaite que nous puissions passer des jours meilleurs après une année très difficile. It is great to not only see you, Nicole, but so many other familiar faces at the Canadian Club. And I know that Yasser and many others are on the panel. I only wish we could be doing this in person, although I wish as well that I could get a haircut before I see you all in person. I'm sure many of you can relate. I do want to thank the Canadian Club for the invitation and for providing a platform to have the kind of thought-provoking conversation about the big issues of our times. And for Canada, any serious list of the big issues of our time must include how we can continue to increase our growth and prosperity through immigration. As we set sail on today's discussion, let's get our bearings. This past year has been a tempest. We have faced stormy seas, not only in government, but equally in business and indeed in every aspect of life. Yet, even as we have seen wave after wave of the pandemic, we've kept our eyes on the horizon and our ship pointed in the right direction. Despite the many disruptions caused by COVID-19, we have kept immigration corridors open, which are vital to our economy, by introducing rigorous and effective health protocols at the border. We started with essential workers, in particular focusing on the healthcare and agricultural sectors. We've worked very closely with provinces and the education sector to devise a responsible plan backed by evidence that has allowed us to keep corridors open for international students to safely return to campuses across the country. Their contributions are not merely economic, but they also add to our social fabric. And indeed, we have created pathways to help families reunite with their loved ones during these very difficult times. And finally, as the world continues to face a migration crisis that has reached approximately 80 million people, we have continued to resettle the world's most urgent cases, those who are fleeing war, conflict, and persecution. And I would highlight a number of initiatives. For example, the introduction of our Guardian Angels program, which has allowed for a pathway for asylum seekers who helped in our hospitals and in our long-term care homes, not only in Quebec, but right across the country. I would point to the progress that we are making in extending status to those protected persons here in Canada. And most recently, I expanded the definition of family to allow for a greater number of Yazidi refugees fleeing Daesh to be reunited with their loved ones. These initiatives taken together have allowed Canada to remain the #1 country in the world for refugee resettlement. Indeed, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, my friend Filippo Grande, has called Canada, quote, a bright light in a horrible year for refugee resettlement. Now, this work has not been easy, and others may have charted different courses. But in Canada, we know that we have a unique opportunity to put up our sail so that we can catch a wave of talent, skill, and experience from around the world that will drive our economy forward. And that sail is immigration. Last fall, I unveiled our 2021 to 2023 immigration levels plan, which aims to help Canada bounce back from the impact of the pandemic by welcoming 401,000 new permanent residents this year. We have made significant strides towards meeting that goal. En février, nous avons exécuté le plus grand tirage de l'histoire de notre système d'entrée express. Nous avons invité 27 000 personnes qui sont déjà ici et travaillant fort et demandent la résidence permanente. Tout au long de la pandémie, les demandeurs d'asile ont accompli un travail incroyable dans nos hôpitaux et nos CHSLD. Ils auront désormais une voie vers la résidence permanente grâce au programme des Anges gardiennes. Nous voulons que les jeunes Hongkongais qui regardent à l'étranger choisissent le Canada. C'est pourquoi nous avons inauguré un programme d'immigration pour aider les résidents de Hong Kong à venir au Canada. And last month, we hoisted our biggest sail yet, a new path to permanent residency for 90,000 essential workers and recent international student graduates. The size, speed, and scope of this initiative is unprecedented. It will support workers with temporary status in sectors like the healthcare and over 100 key supporting occupations, from bricklayers to bus drivers, as well as recent international student graduates. And the kicker is that these newcomers are already in Canada and giving back. They're hard at work in some of the most important sectors of our economy. By giving them this pathway to permanent residency, we are opening up a pathway to prosperity for all Canadians. And the early results of this program are very strong. In less than a week, we have already accepted applications for over 50,000 newcomers, which is well over halfway of the mark that we have set. And I'm looking forward to seeing stronger results still. We're on the right course, and we've raised our sails. We're bringing aboard the right passengers, the best and the brightest from around the world. Now, what about the vessel that is our immigration system? Traditionally, as many of you know, we have resorted to paper-based processes. And as we have raised our levels, this has indeed led to challenges with capacity and processing times, which were exacerbated by the pandemic. The truth is, going forward, we need to retire these paper-based systems because they are well past their best before date. Je suis prêt à parier que presque aucune de vos entreprises ne fonctionne encore qu'avec du papier. So we're seizing this opportunity to shed or shred the paper and move towards a modern digital immigration system. L'importance de l'immigration pour le Canada rend inévitable la nécessité de moderniser le système. But I'm not just talking about upgrading software. This is going to be a transformational change in the way that we do immigration, one where everyone can apply online and check back to get regular, timely updates on the status of their application. Those applying for permanent residence from within Canada will be able to have it confirmed without needing an in-person meeting. International students will complete a single digital application that is tailored to their specific needs, eliminating the need to complete multiple generic forms. New Canadians will be able to complete their citizenship tests online and take their oath in an online ceremony with loved ones tuning in to watch from around the world. Some of these innovations have already begun. Over the past year, over 55,000 new Canadians have taken the citizenship oath at some 9,000 virtual ceremonies. And having been to a few of them myself, I can say they're still very special. And I can recall in particular the Canada Day ceremony that we did last July 1st. It was a ceremony that saw us welcome new members of our citizenship family from coast to coast to coast simultaneously. And what we're demonstrating is that by continuing to leverage technology and innovate and getting creative, that we can continue to make strides in immigration in all of our processes, but not just for the sake of technology, but for changing lives by providing more opportunity and strengthening that prosperity that I spoke about. Comme de nombreuses organisations dans le monde, les changements que nous étions déjà en train de faire ont été accélérés par la pandémie. En bref, nous avons de nous adapter, et nous l'avons fait. The reality is that right now, our immigration system has been one that has been bogged down by paper. We need to change that. The technology is behind the times, and it depends on several dated IT platforms around the world. Our most important one, some of our partners in the immigration ecosystem may be very familiar with, is the Global Case Management System, or GCMS. And as you all know, it is doing its job, but it's aging fast. As we chart a course for our post-pandemic recovery, we must continue to accelerate the modernization of this platform and bring ourselves firmly into the 21st century. IRCC's long-term goal has always been the same: to transform into a truly digital organization so we can continue to maximize our immigration system's advantages and benefits for our clients and aspiring new Canadians. And last month, we made a big down payment towards that vision. Budget 2021 commits over $800 million to create a new digital platform to replace the GCMS. It will help us process cases more quickly and efficiently, meaning that applications will move faster and aspiring Canadians can start to contribute to their communities sooner. Les demandeurs bénéficieront d'un service fiable et convivial et auront accès à des informations en temps réel sur l'état de leur demande, partout et à tout moment. As we continue to welcome more new Canadians, this new state-of-the-art platform will ensure that our immigration system can efficiently handle the increasing number of cases. It's the cornerstone of our new modern immigration system. An immigration system that helps the best and the brightest to ply their trade in Canada. A system that supports economic growth and creates good local jobs in communities across the country. A system that helps Canada to reach its full potential. Un système d'immigration qui inspire la confiance en l'adaptant au nombre croissant de visiteurs, d'immigrants et de réfugiés découlant des nouveaux établis. But modernizing immigration doesn't just mean new technology. It means new people coming from new places too. With borders and travels restricted, traditional immigration has never been more challenging. But at the same time, the pandemic has shone a bright light on the contributions of many newcomers who'd been overlooked for far too long. First, new places. When people think of immigration, they picture new Canadians landing at Pearson Airport. But what if I told you that many of the people that we want to immigrate to Canada are already here? And this is what we call domestic temporary immigration. With travel restrictions being necessary and firmly in place, we need to help those who are already here in Canada achieve permanent status. And this is a central part of our strategy. Ces travailleurs temporaires, étudiants internationaux et demandeurs d'asile sont déjà ici et mettent l'épaule à la rue. And we're engaging them with an array of programs. And I've already mentioned one, most notably the new pathway for 90,000 essential workers and recent international student graduates. By helping them to obtain permanent status, we're also encouraging them to put down roots and to make even greater contributions in our communities right across the country. As I often say, their status is temporary, but their contributions are long-lasting, and we want them to stay. Second, new people. Au cours de l'année écoulée, nous avons appris à apprécier à sa juste valeur ce mot essentiel. Les travailleurs essentiels ont sauvé des vies dans nos communautés et ont aidé à assurer que les familles canadiennes continuaient d'avoir le nécessaire. A glaring truth that I think has hit home for many of us in this past year in particular is that the jobs that we have conventionally referred to as being low-skilled are in fact essential. From caring for our seniors to putting food on our tables, people have awoken to the reality that these supposedly low-skilled jobs are actually anything but. Nos travailleurs de première ligne, qu'ils travaillent dans nos hôpitaux, qui prennent soin de nos personnes âgées ou qu'ils contribuaient à mettre de la nourriture sur nos tables, sont les héros du quotidien. Our new programs are broader than ever, encompassing everyone from carpenters to cashiers. With these new initiatives, we do more than express our gratitude, we're actively demonstrating it. And equally important, we're spurring a broader shift in how society sees these jobs and the people who do them. I hope that a generation from now, Canadians will look back on this moment as a time when we began to better recognize and appreciate the value of this work and an immigration policy that reflected it. Immigration has helped to get us through the pandemic, and it's also going to help accelerate our recovery out of it. Over the past year, newcomers have made an outsized contribution to Canada's fight against COVID-19. You can think of this with big stats like the fact that 1 in 3 doctors and pharmacists is an immigrant, is a newcomer. Mais vous pouvez aussi y penser en termes de millions de contributions individuelles à cette grande entreprise collective. People like Christian Salas, a 26-year-old Syrian refugee who settled in Aurora, Ontario, just a few years ago. When COVID hit, our supply of PPE was extremely limited, and it seemed like the entire world was trying to get their hands on it. Christian said it hurt him to hear that of those who were on the front line were at risk because of a lack of supply in PPE. And Christian took it upon himself to act. He asked his boss if he could use their 3D printers and made face shields for frontline workers. This led to helping found the Ontario Personal Protective Equipment Coalition, a group of people working literally 24 hours a day around the clock to produce our PPE to better protect our frontline workers. In Canada, the term refugee never stopped me from doing anything, Christian said proudly. And I'd like to thank Christian. Je tiens à remercier Christian. As I conclude, I want to return to the beginning of my remarks. While the pandemic has presented some stormy seas for us all, it has also taught us some important lessons. We need to be all hands on deck. The more sails we rise, the faster our ship goes. And we can only get to where we need to go if we can help everyone row in the same direction. And while we are facing uncharted waters ahead, we can batten down the hatches, fix the hull, and be ready to face whatever challenges lie on our horizon. Bien que beaucoup de choses aient changé au cours de la dernière année, une réalité demeure. L'immigration reste essentielle pour l'avenir du Canada, because Canada can only reach its full potential when everyone here reaches theirs. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much, Minister. Nicole, I think you were going to jump in here, but I'm happy to take over. Minister, so we have a Q&A. I know we're going to be short on time here, but clearly this is a topic near and dear to many people in our audience because we've had a lot of questions in, and we'll only probably have time for one. So I'm just going to randomly pick one here for you. And it is IRCC nimble enough to pivot to priority areas with acute skill shortages? For example, allowing more skilled workers in cyber to immigrate. To use your sailing metaphor, are you able to change tack quickly?
The short answer is yes. And I think we've been readily able to demonstrate our ability to innovate and to be creative by leveraging technology. So there is a short-term pivot there that with the new technologies that we're introducing in our processes, that we have been able to better align the needs and the vacancies within our current job market to the skills and the experience and the talent that is possessed by newcomers. And conventionally, as I mentioned in my remarks, I think people have this vision of their mind of newcomers who are arriving by air or by land or by sea. But what we've also done is, I think, really embraced a lesson which has long been, I think, advanced by economists and business leaders and advocates within the immigration sector, which is that we have an accessible pool of newcomers that are already in Canada, that are already giving back. And they're doing so in some of the most vital sectors of our economy. And I think place at the very top of that list, the healthcare sector, where we absolutely need reinforcements to support not only doctors and nurses and pharmacists, but the other supporting occupations that are there to provide the healthcare that Canadians desperately need as we continue to confront this third wave. The good news is that with the introduction of the essential workers pathway, by being creative, we're going to be able to better leverage their talents, not only in the short term, which will accelerate our economic recovery, but also to move the needle in the right direction when it comes to the demographic challenges that we are facing, and which I think are well known by most of our viewers today. And that is the increasingly smaller ratio of workers to retiree. And we're barreling towards, a ratio that looks like about 2 to 1, 2 workers for every retiree. So if we care about protecting public education, universal healthcare, if we care about safeguarding our long-term covenants around retirement security, immigration won't be able to solve that problem entirely, Heather, as you know, but it will move that needle in the right direction. And so that is, I think, one of the many ways in which we have tact, in which we have been innovative, in which we have put in place, the technology to really absorb and leverage those skills in the here and now, as well as in the long term. And it's something that I'm very excited and very passionate about.
Well, I like hearing that you're doing this, taking an approach of digital by design and not digital by default, like just rebuilding a whole system for people. And I think, we are a land of immigrants. I'm the first generation in my family, but I really appreciate that the pandemic, if there is any silver lining here, it has reset an appreciation for essential workers who are here. I have a very dear friend whose father had Alzheimer's, and she had a caregiver who came in and looked after him. He was waiting 6 years. This is many years ago, but waiting 6 years in Canada, wasn't able to see his family. And I think now those unsung heroes have come to the surface of our awareness in the healthcare sector, long-term care sector, and in individual families. So I really appreciate that you have frame the substantive discussion today that we're going to be having. I know you can't stick around for a long time. I wish we could have gotten to more questions, Minister. But I just want to say that I think for many people who follow policy, there are outcomes that affect so many people that you're working on, and it's kind of 3D chess, right, that you have to deal with as you transform the whole system. And I really appreciate that you brought evidence-based knowledge to the table today to frame what we're going to be talking about in terms of pathways for growth and prosperity for Canada post-pandemic. We are stronger together. So, Minister, thank you very much. We're going to move to the panel discussion now, but we will be following your policy very closely.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you again to the club and to all of the panelists. I know there are many champions on that panel and dear friends, as well as viewers today. We are very much, I believe, rowing in the same direction. And it was a real pleasure to be able to join you today. And of course, I look forward to coming back again soon. Merci tout le monde.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Minister. I really appreciate it. It's now my pleasure to introduce your moderator today. It's Khadija Wassim. Hello, Khadija. Khadija is a highly accomplished youth advocate and a former young thinker in residence at the Mars Discovery District in Toronto. She's worked with the Prime Minister in the PMO policy team as a marketing specialist at Google and as an aide to the Deputy Mayor of Toronto, Anna Bailão. She was a Canadian youth delegate at the United Nations, same club, and daughter of the vote with equal voice. So Khadija is also on the board of directors at the Canadian Club Toronto, which is one of our sisters clubs. So we're really happy to have you here today, Khadija. So it's all yours.
I'm really, really excited to be here. I'm really excited to have such like an amazing cohort of panelists that I get to ask questions at. And I invite the panelists to show their videos. And so we're able to see themselves, well, not themselves, so we're able to see them. Perfect. Okay, so first of all, I'm super, super excited for the opportunity to ask you a bunch of questions. That's just something that I love doing overall, and to have you experts in the room about IRCC and talking about tech and immigration is something that's very exciting for me. I'm a big fan of letting folks introduce themselves. I feel like everyone knows what you're doing through LinkedIn now. Everything's online, but I want to really hear about you in your own words. So let's start with Zara. If you could introduce yourself, and then we'll go over to Yasser and then Caroline.
Thank you. I'll start by, first of all, thanking the Canadian Club for inviting me to participate today. I work for Accenture, and I lead Accenture's Inclusion and Diversity program here in Canada. And I also lead their federal practice in terms of any technology work that we do in Canada.
Well, thank you very much, Khadija, and really excited to be part of this panel with some very knowledgeable people, and of course, following the minister afterwards. My name is Yasser Naqvi. I've led the Institute for Canadian Citizenship for last over 2 years. The Institute has been created by our former Governor General Adrian Clarkson. It's a legacy foundation, and our work and our focus is to foster active citizenship, inclusion, and belonging among new Canadian citizens, but all Canadians across the country.
Bonjour, my name is Caroline Xavier, and I'm really thrilled to be here on this panel with my esteemed colleagues, and really happy to have Khadija being our moderator as well. And I am the Associate Deputy Minister at Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada, and I've been in this role for a little over a year now, so still new, still learning, but really happy to be here to have this really important discussion with all of you today.
So the beauty of the pandemic is that I'm actually in Toronto. I'm on the traditional territories of the Mississauga of the New Credit, but I'm able to tune into the Canadian Club of Ottawa event because we're all virtual. Because of that, keep in mind, if my cat runs through or you hear my younger brothers, please ignore them. There's nothing actually like serious happening. It's just this pandemic life that we're living. So with that said, I want to start with our first question, and I'm sending this over to you, Yasser. I want to know, and you mentioned and you referred to the minister's remarks, but I wanted to get your impression on the minister's remarks regarding the modernization of our immigration systems, and how do you believe that these efforts will impact those wishing to become Canadian?
Yeah, thank you, Khadija, and I really appreciated hearing from the minister. First of all, let me just say this: I love his energy. I love his enthusiasm for immigration. It's authentic. It comes through, and we need that in our minister, who is championing, bringing and welcoming new people to the country. That's the voice, that's the level of excitement and energy we need. So thank you to Minister Mendicino for that. Listen, I think when he talks about modernizing our immigration system and using more technology, the time is now. He's absolutely right. And here's a couple of reasons for it. The biggest reason is that we are not the only country in the world that's trying to bring people over. Right? This is not a secret anymore. This is not a small little club where Canada is this great country where everybody wants to go to. It's a competitive world out there. And there are other countries like ourselves who want that talent as much as we do. So we need to stand ourselves apart. And we are an amazing country. Canada has an incredible reputation for being an inclusive, open country. A little bit cold compared to our competitors, but nonetheless. So secondly, technology is going to play a big role. Making it the process simpler and easier to access is going to play a big role in attracting those savvy individuals, young people, young families who are looking to build new lives and to say Canada is the place to go. Here's the second reason. COVID had changed everything. And I think the minister alluded to this, how quickly we have adapted technology. Look at the format, virtual format we're using right now to have this conversation. A lot of these things were happening before, but were not as acceptable as they are today. If we don't take advantage of this changed behavior in modernizing our system, we will lose the race. And I think those two reasons alone, I really appreciate what the minister is aiming to do. And we need to do it fast and not plan it 3 years from now.
I hear you. The amount of conversations I've had about explaining what central heating or heating is like in Canada, be like, yeah, it's cold, but so I totally hear what you're saying. And especially like with the world that's changing so fast with tech, we want to make sure Canada stays on top of it. So thank you for that, Yasser. I'm going to move over to Zara now. And I want to ask about how do you think that the IRCC can implement this new federal funding to create a world-class immigration system that fully leverages the latest technologies and efficiencies?
Thanks, Khadija. Before I directly answer that question, I think being an immigrant to Canada myself, I was just so inspired by Minister Mendicino's comments that I thought I'd just touch on that. I think I can attest firsthand to the fact that Canada really is a long-standing global stalwart in its approach to immigration and anti-multiculturalism. And this country certainly has afforded me with so many great opportunities that there's nothing more inspiring to me than to reflect on Minister Mendicino's comments of immigration being a national strategic asset, an integral part of economic and social growth and prosperity. But then to get back to your question, when we think of a world-class immigration system from the perspective of those wishing to become Canadian, the applicant itself, that means it's a system that's fast, information is timely, and the process is efficient. It's easy to use, right? The services are intuitive and accessible. It's smart. It is, as an applicant, that system accommodates my needs, and it's transparent. I know the status of my file as I move through the process. And so then leveraging the latest technology has to be about meeting the applicant's needs from their vantage points. And so it's really about pivoting our existing processes to user-centered digital experiences and then adapting the latest technologies to deliver on the vision of this transformed modern immigration system. And I think both the minister and Yasser commented on the fact that the IRCC, I think, is already well on its way on its journey to making that happen. And COVID really provided that catalyst to prove that the Crown can successfully move much faster than anyone would have imagined. And as Minister Mendicino spoke of, in a very short time frame, the IRCC was able to deploy digital tools such as the online citizenship exam, temporary resident tool, and others. And so then I think this new federal funding is going to be key to building on that momentum and then to continue to solidify that culture of innovation and being agile, all while taking lessons learned into account.
I hear you. So both from what you've mentioned and what Yasser mentioned, I feel like the pandemic has really expedited the process that we were at. Our trajectory is exponentially faster than it was before. And surprisingly enough, or not so surprisingly, we didn't anticipate how fast we could actually go through going on tech, going online, and implementing these processes. So I love the word that you use, Zara. It has definitely been a catalyst. And I think one of the tech has been a beneficiary of this entire pandemic and this entire situation that we're in. So over to you, Carolyn. I'm really, really excited about this question also, because this goes in a little bit into the technical aspect of it. And it's like a figurative technicality, but I'd love to know, how can a modern digital platform bridge the divide between immigration and naturalization rates in Canada?
So first, let me start by just echoing a bit of what Zara said and my colleagues, Yasser as well, in the sense that it's been a year, right? So, and you said it as well, Khadija, and we've really been learning a lot about how, inefficient really, our immigration system can be right now when we want to be doing things far more digitally. And so absolutely, the investment in a digital platform modernization can only be a benefit to us being able to really promote and improve our response to the immigration requirements and needs of this country. As you heard the minister said, we're looking at over 1 million in the next 3 years that we want to have land in Canada. And that's a huge task. And to be able to do it in a paper-based manner is just not going to get us there. Now, we have done some pretty amazing thing this past year in terms of pivoting quickly, as the minister highlighted, but we have so much more we need to do. And he mentioned that the platform we're on now, the global case management system, is a little bit decrepit and it's in a fragile state. But the investments that the budget 2021 has announced are really going to be helpful. And if I could just add to what Zara said, there's a total recognition that in order for us to be able to bridge that divide, we have to be able to listen to the clients. And so we are driven by the client needs. We are already learning on how to be able to do client-driven design. So we already have digital journeys that are in place for even some of the initiatives we put in place now, like the online elements that we've put on with regards to the citizenship testing and the online application and some of the other examples that the minister shared. But we have much work to do. I'm very worried about what's coming ahead, but not because we're not excited about it. It's just because there's so much in terms of expectations that we need to meet. But it's all because at the end of the day, it is about trying to continue to drive the Canadian economy. And as Yazir said, be competitive and respond to the fact that we need to continue to be a destination of choice for migration and for talent. So we're definitely seeing that we have a role to play, of course, as an immigration department, but in terms of the digital platform itself, how important it needs to be as a vehicle to be able to increase our competitive edge.
Thank you for that. One of the things that I feel like, so I finished my final year of school or in the process of finance and strategy over at Rotman Commerce, so my undergrad. And I think one of the things that this pandemic has really taught students and everyone alike is the experimentation aspect of it, right? So as we're figuring it out, we're open to figuring it out. And I think in the past, people were sort of scared and hesitant to approach new processes for the fear of repercussions. But this is literally the perfect time and the perfect opportunity to try these different variations, to try things that we've never really seen before and figure that out. And I totally hear you, Carolyn. It's very daunting. It's very scary. We want to be doing it faster, but I think we have a bit more of a space to progress forward these days. So with that said, I want to ask this next question to Yazir and Zara, both of you. How can we ensure that the rollout of digital systems is equitable? So this is something that I'm really, really passionate about. So tech and intersectionality, all of that stuff, especially since Canada is so multicultural and diverse. What do you think we can do from a technical and political perspective and as a community overall to make sure everyone has equal rights to digital immigration programs? And what are things that we should sort of flag right off the bat? And what are things that we should start doing right away to mitigate these challenges that intersectional folks will experience on their digital immigration journeys? So we can start with you, Yazir, and then or feel free to unmute yourselves and have a dialogue.
Well, I was going to let Zara speak because she's the more technical savvy person than I am, but I'll share my thoughts after.
Thanks, Yazir. Happy to go first. And I think, Khadija, when I think about this question, I think about what does equitable and fair really mean? And I think maybe there's three things that came to mind for us to think about. And the first one is what you mentioned in your question, and that's equal access to digital immigration programs, right? So we need to make sure that there are multiple channels, accessible channels to engage with applicants so that we're really driving individualized, inclusive experiences, but at scale. So that's first from the applicant's perspective. And then I think we need to think about the back end or the processing part of the system. Digital systems themselves, when we talk about AI, when we talk about machine learning, can have biases if they're not built with a broad view to diversity, to equity, and to inclusion. And so we need to intentionally look for any biases in the algorithms, in the rules that we build, and build these systems in an equitable way with a purposeful strategy up front. And the third thing I think perhaps to think about is that we're engaging the right stakeholder groups right up front in helping us with the planning. I think there's a real opportunity here for the IRCC, perhaps through things like innovative community partnerships, to engage with representatives from its constituent groups, like temporary residents, like citizenship applicants, and new immigrants to help plan and build this modernized immigration system. Yasser, over to you.
Thank you, Zara, and I agree with you 100%. And and Caroline said that in her remarks, we have to think about the client. We have to think about the customer. Let's not do the typical government thing and design something that speaks our language, right? Our acronyms and our legislation. That is going, that may work for us who are sophisticated enough to understand, but we talked about race for the talent. We're talking about people from Nigeria and Chile and Vietnam and all other countries in between. These are the people that we need. We need to speak their language. So I mean it literally. I think we need to also consider beyond English and French as a way of communicating, if that's possible. Of course, English and French and the knowledge of our two official languages is extremely important, but there may be ways that we can speak to them in their language so that they can understand what we're looking for, what are the opportunities and challenges are in Canada, and what are the technical requirements to become a landed immigrant or permanent resident, and eventually a citizen. The other thing is that, I most recently went and looked at the forms that one has to fill out. There's a lot of information. And these are challenging forms. Even an educated person like myself who've lived in Canada now over 30 years, I have to think twice before filling them out. Is there a way we can translate all this technical information that is in lay person's term? So I'll give you an example. When I was the Attorney General of Ontario, we were looking at very similar thing, how to digitize the justice system, which thankfully has accelerated because of COVID. But we also were looking at, and we started with family law to see how we can simplify our forms. And we engaged in a project with a not-for-profit where we gave them some resources to do a pilot project where they translated all the questionnaires into plain language. And they asked the questions where a human being will ask another human being. What is your name? How many children do you have? Blah, 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 blah. When did you get separated? Did you have a home? Did you bought with your former spouse? And then the algorithm translated all that information and plugged it into a technical form. So we didn't take away from the integrity of the forms, but the interface with the client, with the individual, was in plain language that they understand. And then let the machine do the work in putting the information. I think, Zara, this is the point exactly you're making. So we have those examples, and those are the opportunities in terms of fairness and equity that we need to build in our system, so that we're speaking to people at a human level, as opposed to what does the Citizenship Act or the Immigration, Refugee, and Protection Act says. There's a translation needs to be done. So I think those are the things that we need to work on, which takes time, but needs to be done in a manner that we're not spending too much time doing all that stuff either.
100%. And honestly, when you start a process and you're creating a new online process, to get it right or get it almost right or almost at a good shape is better than having something that we have to, retract, redo, and reconfigure later on. I see, Carolyn, you were nodding your head along quite a bit. So if there's anything that you have to add, I'll let you add it, but I will ask the question first. I'm going to ask the next question, but I'll give you a few seconds to add on anything related to this one as well. So my next question is, what are the biggest challenges you anticipate the modernization effort to come up? And I don't really like just talking about problems. So if there's any mitigation situations that you can present with that, I would love that as well. So over to you, Carolyn.
Thanks. So no, I was definitely nodding because there's nothing that Yasser and Zara have shared that wasn't correct, right? At the end of the day, it is so much, as we said, needing to be client driven. And even in the digital labs and the work that we've done in the place that we have modernized so far, or that we've tried to digitize, not fully modernized, but at least digitize so far, we've engaged with the client. We have done these testing sites where we ask for the feedback and then we amend and progress. But to Yasser's point around multiple languages, as stated, our official languages are English and French, and so that's what you'll tend to find on our website. But a big part of what we do is work in partnerships with, other stakeholders. And that's really visible in our settlement and integration sectors in particular, because they are the ones that receive newcomers and they recognize that you need to be able to help them in, navigating through even just the arrival in Canada, let alone the pre-arrival part that Yasser talked about. It's really complex. But Yasser's totally right. And I'd say that in the work that we're doing, trying to ensure that it is more layman, to your point, Yasser, or that we have somebody available to assist you, whether it's through the call center, which we have been able to totally expand because of the virtual manner in which we're functioning now, and have people at a national level and increase the way in which we can be better available to support our clients. So there's a lot more work to do in this space, but the good news is we even got some funding in the budget to help us expand towards that. So again, great news for us in terms of seeing the future being bright. In terms of your question in challenges, there are many. And one of them for me is time, right? Because as we said, or as I feel, there's a pressure to want to accomplish so much and there's not enough time to be able to do it. And we want to be able to take the time to get it as right as possible. We're never going to get it perfect, to your point, Khadija. We have to recognize mistakes will happen, but I'm trying to make sure that they're going to happen in the least amount of manner as possible. But one of the things that Zara said earlier that we're doing is looking at lessons learned. Because let's be clear, Government of Canada doesn't have a stellar reputation in the implementation of big IT projects. So we are trying to ensure not to repeat what some of our other colleagues have done. So the big lessons of what has failed in past implementations. So really trying to avoid those pitfalls as part of our way forward. So that's a big lesson for us. And in having conversations that we're having today and recognizing that government itself doesn't have to provide all the solutions, right? That partnerships with Accenture, partnerships with many other vendors that are going to be interested in helping us here is going to be a key part of what we'll need to do. But one of the things that we have to be better at as a government is how do you manage those vendor relationships so that at the end of the day, we are able to really achieve the client requirements, because we're not always great at defining them, and which is why sometimes we don't end up with the product we really need. So there are many challenges, but I do feel that because of the fact that we're learning from others, trying to not repeat some mistakes that others have made, having conversations like we're having today, speaking to experts, speaking to stakeholders, having those partnerships engaged, and also looking at a module-based approach, not wanting one system to have to be the answer to everything. And we've done a little bit of that again this past year, where we've done just the online citizenship part. And it's still attaching to our global case management system. But at the end of the day, could there be an integration piece that allows us to be able to bring all these various module pieces together? So not trying to find one solution for all that immigration is trying to offer in terms of its services.
Thank you. Yes.
Khadija, can I just,
Go for it.
And Caroline, I totally hear you. I served at the provincial level and not the most stellar reputation delivering on big IT projects. So I totally hear the pain in your voice. And, I recall when I was the minister of the part of the Ministry of the Attorney General, we had tried to do the same thing. We tried to transform the whole system at once, and it just utterly failed. And so we went back, sat down with our officials, and we said, okay, can we do this in smaller pieces? Can we do one small project at a time and learn from the best, invest some money in some innovation and creativity? So we worked with the Legal Innovation Zone, for example, at Ryerson University and other organizations like this, and then see if we can integrate them slowly. So I think there's opportunities like this. We need to look at private sector. We need to look at the not-for-profit sector, organization like the one that I'm part of that continues to rely on digital means to foster inclusion and belonging. With the support of IRCC, there are many opportunities where we can do this. It's when we try to go big or go home, we end up going home. And I think we just need to break it into smaller pieces and deliver it in chunks.
Khadija,
Over to you, Zara.
Sorry, I was going to say I can't help but comment on
Do
this
it.
because I think I want relate back also to Carolyn, a point you made, and Khadija, I think you lined it up earlier, is that one of the big challenges is this strive for perfection, right? And Carolyn, and you talked about that, and Yasser, you did as well. In a major modernization effort such as this one, I think we have to realize that it's okay to make mistakes and not be perfect. So many large transformation programs fail because no bold or meaningful action is taken unless everything is perfect. And so we should absolutely have a North Star, right? Something that we're aiming towards. As you mentioned, potentially break it out into smaller pieces. And we need to be able to pivot and adapt along the way so that we're actually able to deliver what is going to be a really transformational modernization program.
I love that. Go for it. I know this was such a good question, so we all have more to say. Because the other part that we have to be mindful of, as the minister said in his speech, it's a fundamental shift in the way we want to deliver the business, right? And so one of the other parts that we're very focused on as well is the internal change management. And I think, Yasser, you were the one that talked about ensuring, or it might have been you, Zara, that we ensure that we're not, we're checking our biases, right? That the systems we're building ultimately will still be consistent, will be fair, equitable. And that's a big importance for us. And so ultimately, decision makers are still going to be the human individual, the officer, but we are going to try and leverage data analytics as much as we can because we need to be able to push through a lot of volume, but ultimately really have the controls and the mechanisms to ensure and check that the systems are not biased. So there's so much to do in this space and trying to ensure that we remain focused on having a system that is fair. And then my final point is on the talent recruitment piece, right? Continuing to, and it was mentioned, I think it might have been by Nicole at the beginning, that how much talent is required in everything that we're doing in our economy, especially when you think of digitization in terms of engineers, computer scientists, and the minister answered that question as well. But even internally, we want to continue to maintain the talent to be able to support these systems that we're going to put in place, as well as using the private sector to give us some assistance there.
Thank you. I love it when there's like a question that sparks everyone. We love to see it. Folks that are at home, if you're watching this and there's something that speaks out to you, feel free to tweet and post on different social medias. We love to hear it afterwards as well. So as I was a young thinker in residence as Mars formerly, so tech and tech is normal for me. And to your point, Yasser, that realizing that we need to incrementally break down the steps that are needed for systems that weren't designed to accommodate tech. I don't think folks, when they were creating policies and creating different things, even 20 years ago, when people were so fearful of what was going to happen in 2000, will we still be alive, would anticipate the point that we're at right now. So I totally hear that. So I'm going to we only have a couple minutes left. So I'm going to give you guys a 30-second, give you folks a 30-second limit. Try as hard as you can, but don't worry, I'm not going to police it. And it's going to be a two-part question. So I'm going to start with the audience question, and then I'm just going to shimmy in one of the questions that I don't want the audience to miss out on before we head off. So the question from the audience is, how can IRCC and its partners use AI to modernize their services and expedite processing inquiries and applications? And the part that I'm adding on to this, not that it wasn't heavy already, is what is the North Star that you aspire for us as Canadians, for the government to keep in mind? It could be a small project, it could be a country that's doing it well, but what's your North Star? Because I heard that word be mentioned a couple of times, and I don't think that we can talk about AI and we can't talk about technology overall without mentioning what we aspire to be. So here it is for you folks, 30 seconds or less, go. We can start with you, Zara.
Okay, so 30 seconds, North Star part of the question. First, perhaps, I think there are lots of North Stars, lots of places that we can learn from. There are other jurisdictions that have undergone major immigration transformations. So Australia, Finland, the United States come to mind. So I think when we're building towards what it is that this modern immigration system can be, Carolyn, you said it earlier, we need to make sure that we're taking lessons learned into account for others that have gone before us. I don't think I answered the AI part of the question, but my 30 seconds is up, so I'll stop.
It's okay. I'm not gonna hold you to it, but I would like someone. So Carolyn, Yasser, it's between the two of you. We got to carry the AI part of this portion.
Yeah, no, AI as well as data analytics, as I mentioned earlier, is very much part of the toolkit that we want to use as we progress in the modernization of the immigration program. But I have to caveat it as, again, the ultimate element is that the officer will still make the decision. So the intent to use the AI and the analytics part is to help triage through that volume. Where applications are simple, not complex, allow the technology of AI to be able to do that early assessment. And, because some of that is just always the same. And so where we can have consistency in the process, that's where we want to leverage those tools. Ultimately, there's always a human at the other end. And so we don't want to take away that human factor. And I think Yasser spoke to that earlier as well, and how important it is. And we're even saying that we need to do a better job with, whether it's people with disabilities, not all of them can deal with these tools in the way that they're being implemented. And so we have to kind of continue to make sure we recognize that as a government, we're always going to have multiple channels. We have to, because that's what we are. And so, but where we can, we are going to leverage AI and those technologies. And I know that it's scary because ultimately people's privacy, there's a lot of concerns in there, but our goal is to continue to be very respectful of privacy and data protection, cyber protection, to be at the core of all those things that we're going to put in place. But that's a lot of work. So I'm saying all this easily, but it's going to be a lot of effort.
And we have faith in you, Caroline, and your team. You've got some incredible folks at the IRCC. Listen, I think my ideal will be a digital pipeline from the moment somebody decides in some part of the world to immigrate to Canada, getting online, applying, getting through the whole process, coming, and then getting same information gets transferred into settlement and integration purposes, to them becoming Canadian citizens, active citizenship, inclusion, all the things that we talked about there. This is all interconnected. Right now, everything is happening in silos, and we lose a lot of people in between. The most amazing thing that is happening at the Institute for Canadian Citizenship, for example, is the app that we developed called Canoe, which allows for every new Canadian citizens in their first year of citizenship free access to 1,400 museums, art galleries, science centers, national and provincial parks, right? We work with IRCC on that, with partner cultural institutions across the country, but it starts the day they become Canadian citizen. What about before that? So we spoke with IRCC, and they're investing in the Institute for Canadian Citizenship to develop a new digital engagement platform around fostering active citizenship among those individuals who are 12 to 18 months out becoming Canadian citizen. Why wait till they become Canadian citizen? Let's engage them about their rights and responsibilities before. But this just gives you a snippet of possibility and opportunity from the day they landed at whatever airport or land crossing in Canada, and engaging them in that conversation. This will allow for more social and economic inclusion of these individuals, which will benefit our country and all Canadians.
Thank you so much. So that was just to wrap up a few words that were the key words in this conversation have been, this will expedite the process. We need to fail forward. We didn't use the word fail. We need to progress forward. And that there's so much scope for Canada to be a leader in this. So thank you so much for the three of you. I literally could sit here and ask you so many more questions, take more audience ones, but hopefully we can connect later on and discuss this more. But I'm going to hand it over to Nicole as she gives the closing remarks for this awesome event. Over to you, Nicole.
Well, I loved this panel. You guys are all speaking my language. And there was a few final thoughts I had just in listening to all of you. And one is how much leadership has changed, that leaders today really need to start thinking in terms of understanding the technology that is core to the operations of the organizations that they lead. It's not a back office function that you can kind of forget about and delegate. It is essential to sort of your core delivery strategy. And you guys are all exemplifying that incredibly, including the minister. And so I just want to thank you for your leadership. And I just want to also very briefly touch on the theme, I think, Yasser, that you brought into the conversation about that user centricity and how important that is. And that is something that is really core to the culture at AWS and Amazon, is we always start from the customer or the end user and work backwards. And before any projects get greenlit in our company, they actually start with the press release. And in that press release, you begin with the end in mind. You work backwards from the press release that describes how this innovative idea that you have is going to delight our customers. And so it's a great process, and we're always happy to share and talk more about it. But I just sort of want to echo that sentiment that it is sort of core to the success of what you're doing. And again, thank you all for your leadership. I really appreciated the discussion today.
Thank you very much, Nicole. The Canadian Club of Ottawa greatly appreciates the support that AWS has given to make today's event possible, and for bringing the level of thought leadership you did to the table to structure the conversation. This has been really, really informative, and I hope people have some really valuable takeaways. I'd like to thank Minister Mendocino for taking the time for joining us today. I know it was a very busy schedule. It was really important that he framed the discussion, so you had a really stable jumping off point in terms of policy. I'd like to thank our panelists for their collective expertise. That includes Yasser Naqvi, Zara Zadavji, and Caroline Xavier. And to our moderator, Khadija Wasim, for leading the panel. To all of you watching, thank you for your time and your interest in this really important topic. We hope you take away constructive insights on the modernization of immigration to Canada. Immigration is a national strategic asset. We heard that in the conversation. It's true. It's also part of Canada's global brand. It's what we have built our nation on. So really happy to hear the pathways forward on this, and digitizing everything and being all-inclusive, not just for Canada, for people around the world, and for also providing additional support to people who are already here. So you've basically connected all the dots for me, so I hope our audience has had the same experience. I would like to say to everyone, please join us again next week for our final event of the season at the Canadian Club of Ottawa. It is The Ties That Bind, Investing in Charitable Organizations. That's on Tuesday, May 18th at noon. To register, please visit our website at www.canadianclub.ca. Thanks again for joining us, and stay healthy.